What's up, Canes fans? This is the CanesInSight podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. I am D Money. Like promised, we are going every single day of the week, 5 days a week, and it's a whole new era of CanesInSight and CanesInSight content. So we're right back at it. Loaded show today. We have Mike Zuckerman, 10-year college coaching vet. 7 years at Miami, different roles in the program. Last 3 years as the linebacker coach at Utah State. And he's going to give you some real insight. Call it football school with Coach Zuck on the air raid offense. We hear that term all the time on the message boards, on Twitter, but what really is the air raid from a coach's perspective, someone who had to defend against that offense? He'll break that down for you, kind of content you're not going to get anywhere else. Also going to get you up to speed on some recruiting developments, 2 new offers to running backs that were very intriguing. That we'll get into that, watch some of that film, and break that down. But first, want to talk about our friends at Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you've been injured or someone you care about has been injured in a crash, you could be entitled to significant compensation. But you might not be thinking about that when you get in the crash. Your head's spinning. You got all kinds of things going on. You want experts to help you shepherd you through the process, to help you get through it. Dial 1-800-747-FREE. That's 1-800-747-3733. They will take care of you. They've been around the block many, many times. They got investigators. They got medical experts. And, of course, some of the best legal experts in that area. So call 1-800-747-FREE. And they will take care of you. Take back control of your life. Also want to thank our friends at Caneswear. They got a ton of new stuff at the store in Davie or at www.caneswear.com, including a beautiful new baseball jersey. They got the baseball hats, all kinds of baseball gear as the season gets rolled up. They got it there for the Canes. Also Canes basketball, Canes football, ton of Canes football, Dolphins, Inter Miami as that gets going. Just a ton of messy jerseys, so much pink in that corner of the store. The Miami Heat, the Panthers, the Marlins. I just bought a Marlins shirt. Beautiful throwback teal Florida Marlins. So they got everything. It is sports fans heaven and definitely Canes fans heaven. So go to caneswear.com or go to the spot at the Arrowhead Plaza in Davie, and you will find what you need for yourself or whoever you're buying a gift for. One-stop shop for everything. Caneswear. All right, let's get into it. So before we get into the interview with Coach Zuck, I want to start off with some recruiting developments. Matt Merritt, Miami's new running back coach, has sent out a couple offers in the last day, which to me are very intriguing. This is an insight into who Matt Merritt is as an evaluator. These are guys that were not on the radar before he got there. He is now helping make decisions on who's getting offers. So these new names that emerge on the radar are going to let you know what he's about and what he likes. First big name that he offered, you heard about it first on CanesInSight before the offer even went out. Gerard Pringle from Armwood, speedster, track guy, home run hitter. Again, we first heard about it on the bank, CanesInSight, and then it came out on Twitter, and now he's visiting and he's showing a lot of interest in the Canes. But 2 new offers, much different types of backs. Pringle was a speed guy. Now the focus is more on power. Kentrell Reinhardt out of Columbus, Ohio, and Antoine Raymond out of the Clearwater Academy International in Florida. Let's start with Kentrell Reinhardt. This is a guy who started at Bishop Ready, transferred to Westland this year. 6'1", 205, 3,003 total yards, 46 total touchdowns as a junior. Taking his unofficial to Miami on March 28th. He's got offers from Kentucky, Minnesota, NC State, Syracuse, Indiana. Currently ranked as the 51st running back, so not a big name, but a guy with some offers. And you watch his film, I mean, this dude running moon, he's got some size. 6'1's listed. He kind of looks 6'1 on his film, has that lanky running style, got a lot of strides to him, not a choppy runner. Someone, when you have 46 total touchdowns with tremendous productivity, spin moves, some fluidity to his game. Competition might not be the best, although Ohio does generally play good football. I don't think he's in the highest classification, but if you're playing against poor competition, you want to see dominance, and he has done that. Again, he is visiting Miami March 28th unofficially. You're going to get a chance to size him up and see what he's about. But interesting player. Again, Kentucky as a school in particular has done a good job getting unheralded backs from that area, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and turning them into players. So Kentrell Reinhardt is a name to keep an eye on for the Canes. An interesting evaluation by Matt Merritt. I think one thing when you see Matt Merritt's offers, and we'll get into Antoine Raymond in a second, is he's getting guys, at least in this this flurry of offers that have size and physicality and break tackles. Now, shifting gears to Antoine Raymond, even though he's listed smaller than Reinhardt at 5'11", 195, he's probably even more physical on his tape, and he's going against great competition. Clearwater Academy Internationals, where Miami got Isaiah Thomas last year, a Canada kid who came down. They have a lot of international students. I don't know Raymond if he's from America or not. He has a Haitian flag in his bio, but this is a dude who was their MVP of the Under Armour camp in Miami in 2023, had a great junior year. Again, you watch his highlights, you see Venice, you see Columbus, you see Lakeland, you see big schools, and this guy is breaking all kinds of tackles. I think the thing that stands out when you watch his huddle is going to be that contact balance. He is not somebody that goes down easy. Neither he nor Reinhardt are speedsters like Pringle, where they're on a track and they're going to go run in the 10s. But this is a dude who, in games, kind of reminds you of Mike James, if you remember him. Kid Miami signed out of Haines City in Central Florida, ended up going to the pros with the Tampa Bay Bucks, had a nice career before he got hurt. But this guy has that kind of fluidity combined with the ability to break tackles. Again, both guys are pretty smooth and coordinated. Both guys, maybe not home run hitters, but physical and run mean, man. This guy is an angry runner, and he's doing it against good competition. So if I'm looking at these two offers, guys that are not nationally renowned guys, what am I seeing? Again, the physicality, the coordination, the production, and I'm seeing some interesting names on the offer list. Iowa is the big competition for Antoine Raymond. Iowa, known for these big physical backs. Kentucky with respect to Reinhardt. So these are the kind of schools that you like to be alongside when it comes to these physical running backs, because they've shown the ability to evaluate them and sign them over the years. So two interesting guys for Miami to sign and to offer, and a counterpoint to their other offer, Gerard Pringle, who is a pure speedster. So that's recruiting. Now shifting gears to this team led by Cam Ward. What's the offense going to look like? What is this offense really about? We could talk about it as fans, but let's get a coach's perspective and go to football school with Coach Mike Zuckerman. What's up, Canes fans? We're going to do something a little different. A lot of people on the message board, a lot of people on Twitter like to portray themselves as football experts, but the reality is most of us, and I put myself in this category, we never played at a high level. We never coached. So there's a lot that we don't know that we probably should know. So this segment is going to be called Football School, and we are blessed to have a dude in his prime that was recently coaching college at the highest levels, and he is able to break down some of these concepts. Usually when you get a college coach on these podcasts, it's somebody who had some sort of sex scandal or retired because they were too old. It's rare you get a guy in his prime. But we have Mike Zuckerman, most recently a Utah State linebacker coach the past 3 years. Coach MG Tafisi, who was first team all-conference this year, was part of a team that was the conference champion, won 11 games. And relevant to us, this dude was at Miami for 7 years, all kinds of roles at the University of Miami football program, knows the program inside and out. And we're lucky to have him, man. He took a leave of absence for personal reasons, all good. And we're able to learn from him. So Zuck, man, appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate you having me, man. Happy to be here.
I'd like that intro. That was pretty good, right?
Yeah, no, that was really good, man. You made me sound a lot more special than I really am. But no, it was it's cool to be back home right now, and I'm happy to come help you guys out. And always good to talk some ball.
No, man. No, listen. Obviously, one of your things, you hear a lot of things from the fan bases of different places and well-meaning people, but then you kind of text me, or like the media narrative gets somewhere, and you might text me like, "Hey, man, they got it all wrong." So we're trying to right some wrongs here and help understand some concepts that maybe people know the term or they know the word, but they don't know what it actually means and what it entails. So the hot topic today is the air raid. We heard about this when Miami hired Shannon Dawson last year, that Miami be shifting to an air raid. We've been talking about Miami having an air raid system since Mike Leach was rolling at Texas Tech, it feels like, when Miami first hired Shannon. So this is a concept that Miami fans have been talking about for a while. And I wanted to sort of demystify the air raid a little bit and get into what it really is, what it really is not, and how it plays into what Miami did last year and will be doing this year with Cam Ward. So just to start, you as a guy who, again, linebacker coach at Utah State, you called the game this year. You've had the opportunity to prepare for multiple air raid offenses in your career. From your perspective, what do you think when you hear the term air raid?
Well, it's funny. My introduction to the air raid actually came when I was still a student assistant at Miami. So I went to school at UM, proud UM alum. I was working with the offense actually when my career began, and I won't go into who and what and where, but basically at one point we had all the plays we had run in 1 year on a whiteboard. And we were lucky enough, Matt Mummy, who's the son of Hal Mummy, who's the father of the air raid, which we'll get into, came and visited us because he was friendly with the offensive coordinator. And he looked at our board of concepts and just was blown away and was just like, how do you run all this? I don't understand. And I had known this was like my first year ever truly getting involved in football. So I didn't think there was another way. And we sat in a room with him and clinicked for about an entire day and then another half a day. And it opened my mind to a completely different world of thinking within the college football realm, because all I had known was kind of a pro style type deal. So when I think of air raid, there are certain plays, which we'll get into, which are staples of the air raid. But really, and these guys will tell you it, and I'm by no means an expert, and I don't mean to speak on any coaches that are true air raid guys and understand it and anything like that. Like, I'm no expert, but basically and I think this is what they'll tell you too, it's more of a philosophy that they're going to run a core group of plays, do things a little bit differently than other people. They're going to throw the ball around a lot, and they're going to execute those plays at an extremely high level because they're only going to do a little bit, and they're going to be really, really, really good at those few things. And obviously, when you think air raid, you think more, passing game, everything like that. But a lot of guys have evolved it in different directions in terms of the run game and stuff like that. But that's kind of what I think about, is they are going to execute their passing plays at an extremely high level, pass when you don't expect them to, and really just kind of do their own thing and not listen to what traditionalist football is.
One thing that we talked about before we went on the recording is system versus philosophy. So it's not just a system, it's really a philosophy. So what do those words mean when you say them, as far as the difference between a system and a philosophy?
So like when I say system, like system is like purely schematic. Like the triple option is a system. The wing T is a system. In ways, the air raid is a system. It was born, I won't go too much into the history lesson, and you can find a million articles on the internet of how the air raid formed. But Hal Mummy's considered the father of it. But he started, I believe, at Iowa Wesleyan, which I think is an NAIA school. He hired Mike Leach. They took the passing concepts, I believe, from BYU and just kind of simplified it to what they wanted. They brought it to Valdosta State and then eventually to Kentucky. But their whole thing is that they were going to make this simple offense that they could throw the ball around with. And their whole thing is they were going to do it their way. Like, they didn't want to do it anyone else's way. And that's kind of, to me, this is the air raid philosophy, is like, there's one thing: air raid coaches don't stretch before practice is like a thing I've heard a lot. Like, and that's just, there's like that was a Hal Mummy thing. And they truly believe they're going to get enough of their warm up and how they practice and the drills they run and everything is going to give them their warm up, and how they do things and how they practice, and is going to give them everything they need out of a football practice. So they've had a core group of plays over the years, which has evolved and changed and everything. But the essential, like, air raid tree and the guys who coach in it goes from, Hal Mummy hired Mike Leach, and Mike Leach branched off into doing all kind of his own things a little bit, but he didn't stray too far. And then Dana Holgerson worked for Mike Leach, and then he became the OC at Oklahoma State, and then he goes on to become the head coach at West Virginia and then Houston. He kind of branched out in his own direction. So the plays within the system can change, but the philosophy of how it's practiced, how it's preached, the language used, things like that kind of stays the same in terms of like the philosophy of the air raid.
And what are those kind of hallmarks of the way they practice and the way they prepare? You mentioned the no stretching, which, by the way, I don't advise as a 30-year-old man. I've been stretching with YouTube, my girl Maddie Morrison, every morning. That's why I'm a finely tuned athletic machine, and Pete's over there behind the boards like a creaky old man. But, with respect to the philosophy, like, what are some of the things that you say are hallmarks of the air raid philosophy and approach to practice and prep?
Well, I know, like, there's some core drills that they're going to run. They're always going to run what they called a noose drill, which I believe they changed the name because it's not really a great name, like a noose drill. But the key of that drill is essentially a receiver. They start practice with it. The receiver catches the ball, and he's going to turn around on a dime and go forward. And it's like the quarterback's going to put the ball in different directions, and he's going to turn into the ball and get vertical. And that allows them, like, it's a big thing to them that when you catch the ball, there's no dancing. It's like, get as many yards as you can right away. There's tons of routes on air and timing and everything like that, because the whole offense is timing, ball out quick, and understanding just how routes adjust based on zone versus man and things like that. So they're constantly perfecting their craft on how to execute that route. It's like they're not spending time, all right, we're going to invent a new route this week and do this, and this is how we're going to scheme you up this way. They're figuring out the best formations to run the plays that they've repped over and over and over and over and over and over again, that they're going to beat you with execution is their thing. So that's, and they're traditionally they haven't huddled. Some teams do huddle now, but traditionally it's not huddle. And they were one of the first people to really do that because they believe, traditionally it's spread out. It initially actually was a 2-back offense, and then Mike Leach started to spread it out. But he only played with a couple of formations, so it wasn't very formationally diverse. And a lot of guys that they've grown have added more of a tight end to it. The tight end nowadays plays in the backfield a lot like a fullback, so that creates some different things in the run game. But the core philosophy of it is that we're going to dictate to you doing our stuff that we're really, really, really good at, and it doesn't matter what the defense does. Like, a lot of the pass plays are pure progression, which I don't want to get too much into that, but basically that means, it's counting. It's go look at this guy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as opposed to single high, 2 high, this side, that side, look for this, blah, blah, blah. There's a little bit of that to it as far as I understand, but that's kind of the general things that they believe in, regardless of plays, is that they're going to be really good at their stuff.
Before we get into other topics, you mentioned the Holgorsen branch. Obviously, Miami, we're going to get into Miami and how they fit into the puzzle with Shannon Dawson. But what was the Holgorsen branch doing different once he left Oklahoma State and started doing more of his own thing?
Mm-hmm. So at Oklahoma State, I don't know if you remember, they were one of the first people doing like 3 backs in the backfield and everything. And I think that's part of having seen some of Oklahoma State, and just heard about them. Like, I know Mike Gundy is an offensive guy, so I think he really put an emphasis on running the ball, which I think Holgorsen adapted to and really liked. And again, this is my speculation, just study. That's not 100% a fact. But, at West Virginia, and having been a GA at Miami when we played West Virginia in the bowl game, they were huddling a lot more when they'd been all up-tempo, spread out, no huddle. And, a lot of that, I believe, is just because they were trying to slow the game down a little bit and maybe protect the defense. I mean, would be my best guess. To just slow it down, maybe get some plays on a wristband and not have to signal everything. I know people can speculate on that. But, that's where – and he – it wasn't as traditional like Mike Leach anymore, at least when I saw them at West Virginia and what I'd seen at Houston. It was a lot more. They slowed the game down. They had some different run game. They were doing a little bit more in the play action game. And it started to change a little bit there, which is different where if you watch Mike Leach and – he's running as traditional an air raid as it is. He's got his 4 run plays. He's got the traditional pass plays, and he's got 4 formations, and he ain't going to change. Whereas I think Holgorsen's tree adapted a little bit more, especially in the run game and just in terms of the mechanics of the offense. And I think you see that a lot if you watch Miami and how Coach Dawson does the offense. It seems very similar to that.
So now I want you to put your defensive hat on. Okay. And first, you're a defensive coach going against the air raid, right? What problems does the air raid present to you and your defense?
I think the biggest problems the air raid presents is that if you sit in one coverage, they have an answer to it. Like I said, they execute really well. So if they know exactly what you're doing, they know all the little tweaks within their offense to attack you. One thing I thought a lot as a defensive coach is you could tell when someone really had a well thought out system and when someone was just running plays. Like I used to love, if we went against someone who had 9,000 different plays in the breakdown and did a million different things, that to me was an advantage, because I don't think a lot of times guys have ways to tweak within their plays and everything and know the answers and all that when you're running so much. The beauty of the air raid is that they can make all these little tweaks within their passing game and stuff. And their kids start to understand too, because you're getting so detailed into every route that you understand coverage and understand how to tweak this route versus that and everything like that. So the problems were, one, that you had to vary it up because they knew how to attack. And especially if they knew what you were doing, you can end up in a lot of problems where then their players knew what you were doing and they could find the holes in anything you were doing. And then two, just their willingness to throw the ball, even when you don't expect them to throw the ball, creates some issues because, you're always like, you want to get into some type of, if you're going to pass all the time, you want to be able to rush the passer and get in some exotic blitz stuff and everything like that. So you kind of just have to treat that week a little differently. It's funny because we played Colorado State the last few years, and their offensive coordinator's name is Matt Mumme. That's Hal Mumme's son. They're about as traditional of an air raid team as you get. And we played Air Force, who's triple option. And it's almost those 2 weeks, although it's completely different practice style. But you're preparing for something that's so different than what you normally face that it's like, it's just you have to practice and prepare differently for both of them, even though it's completely, obviously different. So that creates problems too. It's just like a different type of game you're about to play.
So now you're the defensive coach on an air raid team, right? The offense is air raid, you're coaching defense. One thing we've heard a lot is, and this goes back to what we had last year, which I understand is a different type of offense, but protecting the defense and how much do you need to slow it down? How much you need to be able to run the ball and control the pace? How much you need to protect the defense? You as a defensive coach, theoretically that goes to your benefit. What can you tell us about that whole debate about how much you need to protect the defense?
Well, the first thing is, and I think too many defensive coaches can get into the trap of worrying about that. The first thing is a defense's job is to get off the field, and don't worry about them. And I'm a big proponent of, and that's why anything I say, if it comes off in a negative way towards any coach, I really, 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 I'm trying not to do that. And if I say that by accident, I do not mean it, because one of the things in the profession that really, really bothered me was when coaches spoke on other coaches when they weren't coaching or in the meetings with them or anything like that. So I think the number one thing is you got to worry about yourself as a defensive coach, and you got to get off the field, because the number one way to have low time of possession for the other team is to get off the field on third down and stop them. Okay. Now, that being said, if a team goes up tempo all the time and they aren't converting first downs, then it plays into the fact that, okay, the defense is going to be on the field longer, and the more plays you have to defend, it's harder on the defense than the offense. For whatever reason, you get tired, your kids start to wear down, and then it can be a compounding effect, especially like if you're outmatched in a game and you can't really stop the other team, and the offense is going to go 3 and out extremely fast, and then they're just scoring nonstop. Like the games can get out of hand very fast, whereas I think it goes back to a team issue. Like, you just have to know what you have. Like, if you know that you're going to score all the time, in my opinion, go fast, go. Like, the defense's job is just to get a couple of stops because you're going to put up 50, and that's fine. If you're going to have if you're not doing well on offense and the defense isn't doing well, it does help to slow it down just to give the defense some relief and to shorten the game. That goes back, like, even in high school, I was blessed enough to play for a program. I lost 3 games in 4 years in high school. And when we played some teams, they would snap the ball with 1 second on the play clock, even in high school, because they didn't want it to get out of hand. They were like, we're going to slow this game down as much as we possibly can. So it's just a matter of defending less plays and not giving the other team sometimes an opportunity to score as many points. So there is some validity to it. I think people blow it out of the water a little bit. And I think it's all a matter of, the head coach managing the game and understanding exactly how it needs to be attacked. So
right, personnel, right? It's like everybody's system. It's not like there's systems that just never have worked. I mean, kind of everything has worked. It's a matter of matching it to what your players can execute and what's going to be best for them, right? At a certain point.
Exactly. It used to be a thing. Oh, spreads never won the national championship, and then like for years, I mean, you can say whatever you want, but a spreads basically won the national championship forever until finally Michigan comes in this year, and then it's cyclical, right? And then Michigan comes back in smashing everyone in 2-back offense, and so now more people are thinking, oh, now this is the answer. And then, I mean, it's funny, you can go on any Twitter, football cyclical, like all this stuff that is like new, you can find someone in like 1920 on the black and white film doing something that looks exactly like it, So it's all a matter of just, like you said, execution and understanding matchups and things like that. Like, I don't think there's one proper answer to any of that, and I think people sometimes get too. I think the best coaches I've been around are very good at adapting and understanding exactly how to adjust and being fluid, like being able to take new ideas and things like that. When you're not able to take new ideas and you're so strict and say, this is the way we're doing things, this is I think that's where you get into trouble. I love learning new stuff. Like, I don't ever want to be pigeonholed into one thing.
We look at Alabama. It's like the combination of being conservative and liberal to an extent. They still do the things that have worked forever, which is in terms of power running, stopping the run. You saw Michigan this year win a championship that way, but then they've also added some more to take advantage of their ability to recruit these dynamic receivers, to do things that cause them problems, right? They didn't give up their tried and true principles, but they just kind of adjusted to the rules and different landscape with the players that are coming in and everything else.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I remember, you watch them. Alabama's got their pro style stuff, but then they're throwing RPOs. They're doing all types of stuff. They don't huddle whatsoever. I mean, maybe a little bit, but no, they're very modern.
So that's a good transition into a team that probably has one of the most expensive offensive lines in the country, one of the better offensive lines in the country, one of the bigger offensive lines in the country in terms of moving people out of the way and playing that style. Miami Hurricanes also have an offensive coordinator who sat in the learning tree of Hal Mumme. So Miami is a very interesting team in that fans expected an air raid, and they're thinking Mike Leach, maybe. They're thinking what they saw with Texas Tech for many years, and they're getting something a little different. So starting with, I know you've had the opportunity to watch Miami this year. Obviously, you're a Miami alum, and you kind of watch it with a different eye than we do. Having seen Miami's offense, which had its ups and downs, we're not even talking about really the results because they had good moments, bad moments, but in terms of what they did, let's start with what they did that resembled an air raid.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, Shannon Dawson has a million times more air raid experience than me, and it's a matter of, I'm sure it is air raid in terms of how he wants it and everything like that. So I'm not trying to say anything negative or anything like that. Like, he GA'd for Hal Mumme. He worked for Dana Holgerson for a long time. Like, that is pure as air raid as it gets. When I watch them, though, just from a coach's perspective, it's interesting because I do think now their pass game, is as air raid as it gets. Like, they're not doing, they run their 4 verticals. I see a lot, which 4 verticals, and anyone who's played Madden knows what 4 verticals is, but 4 verticals is interesting. And I think, we found this diagram somewhere, but you can see all the arrows for like sitting it down. And that's one of the concepts where the air raid kind of changed college football. Is verticals to them is more, it's kind of find space in the defense. And they're kind of reading, and I'm not going to go too schematically into what they're reading and everything like that, but they're kind of reading whether to sit it down or whether to run forward and everything like that. So you can see that's a massive staple of the air raid is just 4 vertical concepts. They're going to throw the ball down the field, and if you're going to sit deep in zone, they're going to sit it down and be able to complete that. So I think you see that a lot from Miami. You see a lot of
well, homie, with this one, I want to, before we move on to the next concepts, I know we got a few concepts queued up. As a defensive back, I know every coverage is different, but is there a tendency to be overly concerned about getting beat deep to make you susceptible when they sit on it? Like, is that like the threat, like the fact that you're playing off a route that could be a huge play, a huge penalty or 6? Does that allow you to sort of sit down and take advantage of, the defensive back and what he's concerned about?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that has to do with, what coverage is called. Obviously, do I have help over the top or not? Am I bailing? Am I pressing? All these things like that. But yeah, and that's a lot of game planning during the week, like in understanding the corner's technique. And obviously, I've heard the phrase, if he, if he's even, I'm leaving. Meaning, if I'm even with the corner when I'm running vertical, I'm going. versus when he's over the top, you're sitting it down. And like I said, that gets into a lot more of how specifically people are coaching it, because not everybody's coaching it exactly like that. Some people lock it where everybody's sitting down. Some people lock it where everybody's going vertical no matter what. But yeah, I mean, that, just to kind of answer your question, like, yeah, when, like, if a team's going to play off and you have a speed threat who can really threaten him, you should have a comeback all day.
All right, so there's other concepts. We talked about four verts. What are some other passing concepts that are sort of trademark air raid?
Yeah, the true, like, baby of air raid, I would say, is mesh. And mesh is a play where I think this is like the traditional air raid version. And the reason that, and Miami runs a little bit of it, they don't run a ton, because there's this, from what I've met of air raid guys, they either absolutely love mesh or barely call it, which is interesting. I know, like, how Mike Leach would call mesh like a million times a game. I know at Colorado State, they ran it a lot. But mesh is essentially, there's two guys that are going to cross. There's two flat control routes. And then there's one, you can see there's a corner route. A lot of times, and then what they'll do, and really mesh, what they'll do is they'll install it one way, and then they'll start adding tags to it. So, like, they'll put that Z in that diagram on a dig over the top of the mesh, an in-breaking route, or they'll put him on a deep post. They'll wheel one of those backs out of the backfield. And obviously you can see this is out of a 2-back set here, but they can create this out of any formation, because it's just 5. It's essentially, they can protect. You can see the back on the left is protecting, or he can free release, meaning release from the backfield immediately and have no protection responsibilities. So this play is an extremely versatile play. That's normally a staple of most air raid offenses. And you can see this diagram kind of shows it. They're taught to mesh, and if it's zone, they're going to sit within the zone. If it's man, they're then going to climb and try and run away. So, a game I think about a lot, and I don't know if you remember this. I can't remember exactly the year, but it was Mike Leach's first year at Mississippi State, and they played LSU, and I believe Bo Pelini was the DC, and it was Mike Leach's first game, and Bo Pelini was just playing man, and they ran mesh over and over, and it was a massive play for them, because that's like a big man beater, right? Like, you create a natural rub with those two guys, and you can run away from people and all that stuff. So this play has become, of course.
Ask, just as far as when you're playing man against mesh, how do you, from a defensive standpoint, how do you coach those guys to avoid that confusion and that potential collision?
So there's a couple of different ways. It matters. I mean, the simplest way is that you're going to stay on, and you're going to designate from the field, your job's to run over the top, and from the boundary, your job is to, like, I've heard the term tailpipe, which means you want to be directly behind the receiver. You try to designate who's running where to create, to be on different levels and not create traffic. Some people cut routes, meaning that they have some type of low hole player who's going to take one of those routes and free up a guy to take another route. They kind of pass things off even within man coverage, and that takes a good amount of investment and work. And some people play a version of man where once guys run underneath, it turns into zone. So everyone just zones it off and tries to pass things off. So I think the biggest thing, especially like I said, when you're playing an air raid team, is varying it up. If they know you're doing it one way and they're running a lot of mesh, they're going to destroy you. You've got to have different ways of handling it. Otherwise, they're going to just pick you apart in this play. It's because it's such an easy. And then for the quarterback, he's just straight looking through this thing, like on a progression. And then if they tag something, he can look to that first, or like a wheel or a post or things like that. But, it's just got answers to everything. And like you said, it is tricky in man, and you have to have multiple answers or not play man.
Before we move on to the next concept, just from a Miami perspective, did you see did you see this type of 4-vert attack and this kind of these mesh concepts on Miami's film last year?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say in general, when you watch Miami, I mean, their pass game to me is air raid. They don't, even if it's not most of the concepts are traditional. If they're not traditional, they don't do a ton else. I think where they've branched out is, I think their run game is very pro style. and we can get into that another time. But the run game and the play action off the run game, that is not traditional air raid. And I think that's where you see kind of the mesh of like a pro style and air raid with them, which is interesting to me because you get when you're running the power runs they're running and the play action shots, that's not traditional air raid. But in terms of when they just drop back and pass the ball in their screen game, all that stuff is kind of traditional, what you'd expect.
And do you think that's just a byproduct of having such a physical, big offensive line that can move people?
Yeah, and I think it's a philosophy because it's interesting too when you watch other guys who've run the air raid. That's kind of where it's grown because, I kind of always use Mike Leach as a reference point, and I coached against him once at in the what was it? When did we play him? Sun Bowl?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's going back. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, in the blizzard. That was fun.
Yeah, halfback pass.
But you're gonna get me in trouble. But they had like one run play, legitimately one run scheme, and I coached with some people who actually coached at Washington State, and they were like inside run. They only had run. We had to do it on cards because they had one run play, and that's what Mike Leach did. I think where a lot of guys branched out, like you see, I think it was kind of started, like Cliff Kingsbury and Dana Holgerson and everything. Like they wanted to be more into the run game and have more diverse answers, and some of them got really into RPOs and things like that. So that's kind of just branching out and studying the rest of college football. I think a lot of it also comes from the O-line coach. A lot of times the O-line coach is the dictator in a lot of programs of what the running game is going to be. So I think obviously, in Miami and Coach Cristobal and Coach Mirabal's background and what they want out of the run game, I don't think that kind of goes into, kind of how the air raid is. Like this is what I think the run game can always be adapted. Again, going back to it's kind of just a philosophy of what they're going to do, but the conceptually, like duo is not a traditional air raid concept, and Miami runs a lot of that. So, but it's, so that's where it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, you said about the offensive line coach, I think to Oklahoma, and they had his name Badenboff. I want to make sure I'm not messing up the name of the longtime offensive line coach for Oklahoma. I mean, they had very similar personnel to Miami right now, where you have big offensive linemen, kind of gap scheme type of guys that are going to go play pro because they're big and they're athletic and they can move guys. And then you saw a lot of pulling and stuff like that. And that offensive line coach seemed to have a lot of sway with Lincoln Riley, who you think, traditional Mike Leach air raid kind of guy.
Yeah. And then, I mean, that's a great example because Oklahoma's kind of one play that started to emerge probably like 2018, 2019 with Oklahoma and now spread everywhere is what's called GT counter, which essentially, or just GT, I don't know, people use different names, but essentially it's when you pull the guard and the tackle on a play, and it's an inside hitting run play. The first guy's kicking out the defensive end. The second guy's wrapping for a linebacker. That became Oklahoma's baby. Like everyone knew they ran it ridiculously well. And, again, that's just, this is going to be ours. And then everyone started copying them. But yeah, when you think traditional air raid, it's not fancy pulling run game, but that became theirs. And, I'm sure Lincoln, I haven't watched a ton of USC, but I'm sure they're still running a ton of it. And so that's kind of the beauty of the system and why I've always, as a defensive coach, really admired it because it does allow for a lot of creativity. And there's no one, like I said, it's more of a philosophy than it is a certain set of plays. Yeah, they have their staples, but they can adjust it to anything.
Yeah, you think about Jalen Hurts running QB power.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see that with the Graham Harrells and the Cliff Kingsburys of the world when they were players, right?
Right.
It's
right, because you've got your traditionalist branch with Mike Leach, who wouldn't change anything. And then the younger guys who all started to come up wanted to do more and were exposed to more stuff. And it's all good. There's none of it. There's no bad like scheme or anything like that. It's just, what you want to focus your time on, how much you think you can get done without drifting away from, your core stuff.
I want to get through these other concepts too, because it's just, it's interesting to say air raid. I want to visualize kind of what it looks like so we can recognize it on Saturdays. So what are some other passing concepts that you say are staple air raid concepts that you're going to see on Miami film?
Yeah. So the two, like quick game's a big part of the air raid. And when I say quick game, it means like catch, throw, balls out quick. because a lot of teams, especially the air raid teams that don't run the ball as much, those become like your running plays, right? This is a quick way for us to get 5 or 6 yards, maybe make someone miss and making an explosive play. But those are a big concept. And the two that have been around for a long time in air raid offenses, which you're always expecting to defend if you defend them, are stick and snag. And these aren't plays. These are plays that are pretty universal in football, and everyone really runs them. But these guys, they're going to run a lot. You can see this is a 2x2 picture here. So in 2x2, it's essentially, they put the back in the flat. I know it says 8 right there. That's normally a shorter route than that. And, and they're basically reading, if you give them, and I don't know, people read it differently, but this is kind of a play like pre-snap. They're going to pick a side they're going to read based on the coverage, and it's just catch, throw between the stick or the slants. And this is an easy concept. I'm sure everyone's run this in Madden 9,000 times, and they can run this at a 2x2, or you can run it at a 3x1, in which case you would just take that H in the diagram and put him in the slot, and he'd still run the same route. And then you could take, and it could be an empty, or if you if it was, like I said, 3x1 with the H in the slot, and you took that Z and put him in the backfield, you could put him in the flat, or you could protect with him and then still have that backside slant. So this is a really, the interesting thing to me watching Miami, I don't think they did not, they ran some quick game. Like, they didn't run as much as I'd expected them to. Cam Ward ran a lot of this, just various types of quick game, catch and throw type stuff, which he was like really, really good at Washington State. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this they run next year, knowing he's really good at it. And obviously it's in their system. So yeah, this was a big one as a catch and throw. And it's a staple around football. The other one, which is a very similar concept, is known as snag. Some people call it star. Some people have called this in traditional air raid terminology was Y corner, but it's essentially, if you really think about it, the same concept. There's one intermediate route, there's one flat route, there's one deep route on one side, and they put, there's normally slants on the backside, and they can tag and change all these things up. But essentially, this is catch and throw. And you can see that X receiver can either sit it down in a zone, or he can stay on the run versus man. And this is just a really easy concept. People run a ton of this, like everywhere. This is a traditional. It's hard. This play is hard because traditionally, if you're playing zone, unless you're in some type of cover 2 where you have 5 underneath defenders, you're either that X is going to be open or that F is going to be open because of just how many underneath defenders in your distribution you have. You'll probably have a window to hit one of those two guys. And then obviously if somebody's playing man coverage, slants are always a good option versus man coverage. So these are plays they're going to run a lot. And obviously they don't have to be out of this formations. They can create them with motions, everything. But if you're paying attention, you'll see this. A lot of times, and I saw this on some of Miami's tape, they'll put that slot receiver who's on a corner in this picture. They can put him on a dig. That's not like the traditional air raid way, but some people like it better that way than because they like the dig throw better than throwing the corner. It's an easier throw in the quarterback. So there's a couple different ways you can do it, but those two are staples. Any air raid team you watch, you're going to see a lot of those concepts. And some people actually, you can partner those with a run play and create an RPO out of them too, because the ball is out so quick that you have time to either throw the ball or hand it off. So,
but that's predicated, right? Those two concepts are really, you have to get the ball out quick and accurately. Yeah. Right? That's the most important thing to make that work.
100%. And that's why, like, if you watch air raid teams, a lot of times, they're not big on these 7-on-7. You watch these kids in 7-on-7 or these videos where they make a kid fall, like doing like 9,000 different dance moves at the line to like these crazy releases. Like that's not, air raid's all timing. They're trying to like, there's no time to be dancing at the line of scrimmage and setting people. Like it's all about your fastest release possible from my understanding. And again, I have not coached offense. I could be wrong about every single thing I'm saying, but this is just my understanding of it is those releases have to be fast so that the ball can be out.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Cam Ward as far as potentially fitting his skill set and something he did at Washington State. I was out there in practice yesterday. He is so, just comparing him to TVD, again, they were just in helmets and shells. And it wasn't anything crazy, but just seeing the first impression of hey, I've seen TVD for 3 years. Now I've seen Cam Ward. It's just a lot quicker operation. And it makes me think Cam Ward was a really prolific basketball player in high school, point guard. Like that was his position. He was a point guard. He had to make quick decisions and throw to different kind of, pass to different kind of players. Whereas TVD played some basketball. I think he was a big man, but he's really a pitcher. And pitcher, you're taking your time. You have a target and you hit the target accurately. And that's kind of it. It's I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but definitely Cam Ward gives me more of that point guard vibe where he's spreading the ball and making really, really quick decisions with route concepts like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing, too, like looking at Miami last year, a lot of decisions in coaching are based on what the players can handle, what, all that stuff like that, which none of us are privy to. Like, I can't tell you why they did things. I can't tell you, what TVD was good at and why they did things. I know watching, but so I'd be shocked that, like I said, air raid guys are most of them are very flexible and can adjust. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more ball out quick type stuff with Cam Ward. I've only watched a little bit at Washington State, but they were more of your traditional, no huddle, go fast, and through a lot of, so he's used to catching the ball and getting the ball out immediately. And obviously he's played a lot of football. I mean, I know, I actually do know the scheme because he was at a UIW originally, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and the scheme they were running at UIW was actually more similar to what you see at Tennessee, which is a whole different branch of offense. But so he is used to being in an offense where he needs to decipher things extremely fast and get the ball out and run the show and all these things. So I'm sure, I don't know if their terminology, because I don't know exactly at Washington State their background or their coaches, but I'm sure the terminology is not too far off. He's been doing this a long time, and he's been in different systems and has succeeded in all of them. So I mean, that doesn't surprise me. And that's the thing that stands out to me the most when I watch just a little bit of him, is how quickly the ball is his release and how much that ball can just fly out of his hands. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that. I mean, I think you even saw it in the bowl game. Like, obviously, is it Jakari? Did I pronounce that right?
Jakari, I struggle with it too. I got it wrong on the podcast yesterday.
So Jakari, I mean, you saw it in the bowl game too. There was some more quarterback run type stuff, design quarterback run, which I knew some guys at Rutgers, and they were going back, digging into Houston, looking at, and they said at Houston there was more quarterback run game type stuff. That's what they were doing to prepare for that game, because they obviously didn't have any film of how that would go. So obviously there's more tricks in the bag, and there's more things they can do. And a lot of air raid, and one thing I didn't touch on is, like, the more the quarterback can handle, the more they will give. I know for a fact, and I'm not sure how many other guys are doing this, but Mike Leach would let his quarterback call the game. He would put him in a formation and, like, signal him a couple of suggestions and let his quarterback call it. Now, I don't know how many other air raid guys are actually doing that, but there is some freedom, especially the more, and this is just general offense, the more your coordinator trusts your quarterback, the more he'll put on his plate and let him do. So, I think it'll be exciting
guys
to see.
were head coaches, right? I mean, the guys that he was telling, Mike Leach's quarterbacks, how many of them became head coaches? So I guess they could be trusted. So,
exactly.
Zuck, man, appreciate you. Listen, this is going to be kind of a reoccurring thing. I know we've talked about it. These football school segments, a lot to learn about, a lot to talk. I know you yourself, you're always learning. You've never been one to say this is how it is. You're always trying to find out more. We were talking about Washington State earlier, and you're diving into the film. So I know you're always trying to learn. And of course, our fan base is trying to learn. So, hey, appreciate you, and looking forward to doing this again.
No, and this was awesome. I had a blast.
Take care.